Good afternoon, everybody here, and welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here with us to kind of share some perspective of what's happening within the automotive industry. There's a lot happening, as we all know. At this very moment, we also take the opportunity to celebrate here in Berlin our 25th anniversary. Of course, you know, 25th anniversary of the association. The automotive industry is already around for longer than 25 years. But 25 years ago, several organizations representing the interest of the automotive industry came together into one organization. We use this anniversary as an opportunity, and that's always important for everybody, also for us, that we use from time to time moments to reflect about what happened, what we've done in the past, what we should continue do differently in the future. And so we have tried to reflect about this and have formulated a manifesto. We call it a manifesto for clean, safe and smart mobility. Looking at what we have accomplished as an automotive industry, I know, and it's always like that, there's always a lot of criticism on certain industry sectors, including ours. We have, however, done and achieved a lot in the past 25 years. That doesn't mean we've done it all perfect. We recognize that. We need to learn from what went wrong, and that's what we're doing, and what we want to do also for the future. See how we can move forward and ensure that we use the innovation and creative capabilities within our industry, to reinvent ourselves and make sure that we can come up with better mobility solutions which are safer, cleaner and smarter. This requires not only us as an automotive industry to move forward, we need also an enabling regulatory legislative environment in order to deliver that. It always takes two to tango, like they say. That's also for our industry. And so we also used this manifesto to formulate some recommendations also to the policymakers on what would help us to deliver even better on these commitments which we are formulated in this manifesto. We're also happy to announce today we have a new pocket guide. You got that probably already when arriving here, presenting the latest figures on our industry. The good news is that we continue on this path of recovery for our industry without being back to the level where we were in 2007. If you look at the first quarter of 2016, sales were up in the European Union 8.2%, which equals 21% of the global market. We see also, that we continue to make progress when it comes to selling alternative powertrains, even if that is not yet to our full satisfaction. But again, if you look at electric vehicles, we kind of were selling first quarter 26.8% more versus last year. It still remains, however, very small. I mean, if you look at the number of sales for alternative powertrains, which is currently, if you look at it on a quarter basis, first quarter of this calendar year, it only corresponds with almost approximately 4.5% of total sales. Okay. Good thing as well that we see production continues to be on the increase in Europe, plus 1.4%. And with that, when you look at passenger cars, Europe, and I'm talking now European Union, represents currently 22.5% of the global passenger car market when it comes to production. So I'm talking here production, where besides Germany, we see increasing countries like UK, Italy, France and Spain picking up when it comes to producing cars. Ladies and gentlemen, That's what I wanted to kind of cover by way of introduction. Again, we're gonna be happy to answer questions afterwards, but first, let me give the floor to our president, Dr. Zetsche.
Thank you, Eric, and good afternoon to all of you. As you know, it's the 25th anniversary of ACEA, and it's fair to say that the industry has come a long way during that time. We are pioneering technologies that enable autonomous driving, connectivity between vehicles and infrastructure, and the digitalization of virtually every process from design and production to sales and service. These changes are massive, but they are also not very controversial. The benefits of smarter, safer and more connected mobility are clear. It's a little more complicated with another goal of our industry, decarbonization. Europe's car manufacturers have already made significant improvements to the CO2 performance of new vehicles. Still, we are committed to do more. To accelerate that process, we need to overcome three major challenges. Let's start with a very significant challenge of decarbonization. Beyond highly efficient combustion engines, alternative powertrains are crucial to our industry's future. But at least for all electric vehicles, the truth is, as of now, this is a business without a business case. No manufacturer of all electric vehicles is earning money with this technology yet. The point is, European auto manufacturers carry responsibility for 12.2 million Europeans working directly or indirectly in the automotive sector. So decarbonization is like crossing a canyon on a slack line. Balance is key. We have to act both fast and responsible. We want to cross that canyon, yet visibility of the other side is low. 99% of new car customers in Europe did not choose an all-electric vehicle last year. However, I'm confident we will cross that canyon, because you won't find more automotive engineering competence anywhere in the world than here in Europe. To do so quickly, we need a close alignment of industry, policymakers and customer demand across the board. The second fundamental challenge we face, despite the progress we are making in vehicle technology, is that new vehicles only make up 5% of Europe's entire vehicle fleet. The average age of cars in the European Union is currently close to 10 years and rising. So while less CO2 is emitted per kilometer by new cars, emissions from road transport on the whole have not decreased as hoped. This shows emission goals that exclusively target new vehicles simply fail to address the bulk of the problem. We need a comprehensive approach that reduces CO2 emissions more effectively by drawing on the full spectrum of solutions, cleaner fuels, altering driver behavior, improving infrastructure, introducing more intelligent transport systems, and of course continuing to reduce the emissions of every single new vehicle. Towards that end, ACEA put together the expertise of more than 50 key stakeholders, all bringing different views to the table. The findings were summarized in a report titled Joining Forces to Tackle the Road Transport CO2 Challenge. I urge you all to read it. We have copies for you here today. The third challenge on emissions concerns their measurement. Put simply, to manage them right, we have to measure them right. Take Germany's Federal Motor Transport Authority, KBA, lab tests and the UK's Department for Transport real-world tests for emissions. They highlight the differences between laboratory test cycles and real-life driving conditions, where emissions vary depending on the temperatures, road conditions and driver behavior. The current NEDC test cycle was designed back in the 1980s and only revised in the 90s. That's why we have been advocating an updated laboratory test, WLTP, for many years. The same goes for an additional new test to measure pollutant emissions on the road. It's known as real driving emissions, or RDE. But RDE requires a tremendous effort on the part of Europe's car manufacturers, both in terms of investments and production. WLTP adds another layer of complexity. That's why harmonizing the implementation timeframes for WLTP and RDE would help a lot. But altogether, it's absolutely clear that we support these regulations. We must make sure that not only we as car manufacturers are ready for these new regulations, but the authorities and systems in member states who refer their systems to their numbers which are measured have to be adjusted as well, and this has to be done in time as well. So we are strongly supporting these new regulations because they will provide clarity for customers and the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, decarbonization, measurement and the aging car fleet are the three challenges I've just described. Yes, we are facing them from a position of strength. As we just heard, the automobile and parts sector is the EU's largest investor in R&D, spending 45 billion euro on innovation each year. That innovative power is one reason why the European auto industry produced 18.4 million cars, vans, trucks and buses last year, or 20% of global motor vehicle production. And looking ahead, we now forecast growth for EU passenger car sales in the region of 5% this year. Commercial vehicle sales should also grow substantially. But it's also important to note we are still below pre-crisis level. So in closing, let me express one wish on the occasion of ACEA's 25th birthday. We need political partners who continue to stand by the principle of free trade and are determined to safeguard the positive momentum of our industry. In turn, I can assure you, everyone at ACEA is determined to accelerate it. Thank you very much.
So we can open now for your questions. We have quite limited time today. Just before we begin, just to stress that Dr. Zetsche is speaking here in his capacity as President of ACEA, so speaking on behalf of the European industry as a whole. So we won't be taking company-specific questions. Your questions in English, please, and your name and media outlet.
Christian Metzner, Automotive News Europe. Dr. Zetsche, in your capacity as head of the industry, I think the public has lacked a sense of critical self-reflection regarding the crisis that's gone on. When you hear the reaction from the automakers about the allegations that have been made against them, oftentimes you hear, well, we didn't do it. And the sense is, well, we obeyed the letter of the law, if not the spirit. The auto industry seems not to have taken enough responsibility for the role it's played in this current crisis of confidence. How is the industry going to respond to this, especially when it comes to putting forth constructive arguments about how to solve the carbonization problem in the industry, which may now fall on deaf ears?
Well, as I said before, we do believe that it will be very helpful to have a clear regulation which eliminates these areas of gray, where interpretations and perspectives then play a role. What is legitimate, which is the real intention of the law, and what is written in the law. So the most important part to overcome this situation we are facing, which definitely is diminishing the credibility of the industry as well, is to establish these new and clear rules where the measurements you see in that defined process is very similar to the measurements which you can get in any other way you address the emission level. And therefore we are very much supportive of that and hope that we very soon get the final still missing elements of the regulation, that we can adjust our activities and efforts to fulfill these then clear regulations.
If I may complement that, clearly we take all these allegations very serious. Okay? But one, we know one of the issues which is currently where everybody is pinpointing to has been an issue which unfortunately is already known for quite some time. On the one hand, we have in Europe the approach that testing needs to be done following a by law prescribed methodology. That is what currently is happening by all manufacturers. The issue is, of course, regulation is never able to catch up with the advances technology is making. And that's what we have been seeing in a way, because cars today are being tested as if they would be manufactured in the 80s, disregarding all the advances in the technology which have come in since then. That is what the law currently prescribes. That's why we are, as Dr. Zetsche very clearly said, we are fully embracing the proposals which are currently made by the Commission and Member States to immediately update this testing methodology to bring testing closer to the outcome of real driving emissions. Okay. There are still details which are being discussed by the Commission and the Member States, but we need these to get in place rather sooner than later, so that we can move ahead and everybody can test the same way. Because we need a reference. If everybody would start deciding tomorrow how they test, we're going to start comparing apples with pears. So we need the same parameters, the same testing methodology to be applied by every manufacturer in Europe, and that's why this legal framework is urgently needed.
It just seems that the industry, however, if the industry has been for years arguing for an update in the European driving cycle since the 90s, you would think that it would have already happened. So the suspicion is that the industry has lobbied too hard to maintain regulation being obsolete so that the technology can reap rewards for the manufacturers but not for the public good.
I would challenge that. Clearly, I mean, for instance, the new testing methodology WLTP, which is currently being finalized, is one which was being prepared at global level through UNEC in Geneva. We would have been happy that would be implemented right away in Europe, but the Commission decided to take what came out of UNEC and started to have other discussions to further add new requirements to this. So we have, unfortunately, with the tendency in Europe as well to make things which are already complex even more complex, which then takes more time. Again, it is what it is. We are fully behind the new proposals now. We want to kind of start implementing them tomorrow, but we need all the details to be finalized.
I'm going to take a question.
Ja, Christian Schlesinger, Wirtschaftswoche. Zetsche, there is a discussion going on in the German government right now if a Chinese company might invest in a German car supplier named KUKA, which produces critical technique. How do you feel about Chinese companies investing in core techniques for the car industry?
I have a hard time now to speak on behalf of ACEA because we didn't have a consensus building on that question. But when I respond on my own behalf, we have not seen negative development of suppliers in Europe or in Germany who have Chinese shareholders in their attitude towards us as customers. And therefore, at least there is no proof in case that this would be a risk if such an ambition which has been published would come into realization.
Yeah, Christian Grimm with Dow Jones and Wall Street Journal. Mr. Zetsche, could you give us some more details on the proposals you laid down in the position paper on once CO2 taxation? What does it mean for ACEA? Should the car drivers pay, like companies, a certain amount? And you mentioned some incentives for fleet renewal. Could you elaborate a bit more on that?
Okay. Yeah. I'm happy to take the question. I mean, as we are moving forward and try to indeed look at the future for decarbonization of transport, we want, in fact, and you see that in our paper, we are promoting what we call an integrated approach. We say, as manufacturers, we need to continue to do our bit. Okay, we're committed to do that. continue to investing on powertrains, looking at the potential of connectivity technology, which may offer new opportunities also when it comes to decarbonization of transport. We need to look also at other elements. And so the tax systems in general is a tool which is being used effectively by lots of the member states. There's nothing happening at European level because, as you know, on taxation it's hardly impossible to do something at the European level as it requires consensus among all 28 member states. But a lot of member states have put in place, also in the past, tax incentives to encourage transport to be decarbonized. Okay. As a matter of fact, in that context, you can refer to what has happened in 17 of the 28 member states in Europe, who for the past years all had tax incentives favoring diesel and encouraging consumers to buy diesel and, per definition, also diesel cars, because they were better and more performing when it came to fuel consumption and also CO2 reductions. So that has led to a complete market move into Europe towards diesel, contrary to what you see in other places in the world. So tax incentives can play a role to influence purchasing behavior, especially when we talk, for instance, alternative powertrains, where we see in countries around Europe, like Norway, where tax incentives have proven to be instrumental in encouraging a change of consumer behavior, and which we welcome, provided it's temporary, because otherwise it would create market disruptions. It's in that same context we have looked at fleet renewal schemes. Every government in Europe has fleet renewal schemes. It's again often tax related, where incentives are being given to citizens when they buy a new, cleaner vehicle. Reality, however, today in Europe is, and again these schemes are very good, but there is no uniformity in the way these schemes are operating. These schemes are very different from one country to the other. We know, again, it's mission impossible to say at European level we need to harmonize these schemes. That's never going to work. But at least I think there is an opportunity for member states to exchange best practices and to pick the best from each country in order to indeed make sure that these fleet renewal mechanisms are set up in such a system that they are becoming an effective tool to change the market towards decarbonization of transport.
Nikolaus Deutewelt. Mr. Zetsche, to make cars cleaner needs to implement new technologies in these cars. Before that, you have to invest in these new technologies. So do you think that cleaner cars will make the vehicles for the customers, for us all, more expensive than now? And I'm not talking only about battery vehicles, I'm talking about all kinds of passenger cars.
I mean, it's clear that, as you rightfully said, there are advancement of technology which we get by R&D, typically require investments in R&D and then in the implementation in CapEx and then in variable cost as well. At the same time, the auto industry lives since many times from the need to find efficiencies and improve productivity. So it's our responsibility and the need to find the best balance possible in cost reduction opportunities on the one hand and additional content on the other hand, in the first place to reduce the CO2 footprint, which altogether still tries to keep kind of a balance with the cost of the vehicles. So far, there's very little willing of customers to pay additional price tags for CO2 reducing contents of the vehicle. And therefore, if the customer doesn't provide that willingness, we have to find this other solution I was just talking about. But there's no doubt that this portion of the vehicle grows all the time, and to some extent we have to ask ourselves if other improvements of the vehicle in all other fields can be added the same way we did in the past and then potentially ending up altogether with too much additional content per year to be able to offset by productivity gains. But at the same time, we have discussed that, of course, digitalization is another, I wouldn't like to call it challenge, but rather opportunity where the customer can get new characteristics and capabilities of the vehicles, but again, they don't come for free either. So this is this kind of situation we have today where 3-4 major areas of vehicle technology, including behavior when it comes to sharing, to car sharing, major changes happening, mostly technology driven. All of these being great opportunities, but in order to grab these opportunities, we have to heavily invest into the future. And that's what we are doing. I talked about this 45 billion R&D per year, which is by far the biggest amount of any industry, which should exactly give us this opportunity of transitioning into a future beneficial to the customer, beneficial to the environment, and with our companies still being alive.
One very last question.
Yes, just add on. Stefan Menzel from Handelsblatt. You mentioned this extra price for cleaner cars. How do you want to reach that goal? How do you want to do it? Just by price, that you raise the price, or do you want the governments to step in on an extra tax?
I mean, first of all, we are in a private economy, or in an economy which is driven by private enterprises, and generally cannot be the task of the government to subsidize our technological change. What just has been decided on the electric car is limited, time limited, amount limited, cap, and you can still discuss that, whether it's good or not, but everybody, or many felt that it would be a signal which might expedite the demand on the electric side. But this cannot be a general approach. It's our responsibility and our task to find the ways into the future to continue to satisfy our customers and adhere to all the understandable requests to our industry. So far we have done relatively well. I mean, getting to the 2020 CO2 targets already required significant investments in technology, and we can show that specifically. And so far we were able to do that by mostly compensating these additional costs by, as I said before, a higher efficiency across the board, because once again, the customer in general is not willing to say for 10% or whatever less CO2, I'm willing to pay 5% more price or something like that. This is not a formula which is accepted by the market.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zetsche. Thank you very much to everybody for coming. It's a tight schedule today, but Mr. Jonard will be available for another few minutes if any of you have follow-up questions.
Thank you very much, and have a good day. Thank you.